not here and he's away, we can still run a service with, 3 or 4 days notice. So it's good. We praise the Lord for that. So if we could turn to, so if you've got your Bibles, we are going to look at the story of Jesus walking on water. That's the Lord. Time. I'm not going to demonstrate that today. I don't think I can do that, but a couple dozen years ago Jesus did just that. He went and walked on water. If you could turn to John chapter 6. Now there's 3 accounts of this happening in the Bible, the same event, and 3 accounts of it. And Jason read the account from Mark chapter 6. The other account is in Matthew, and I'm going to read the account in John chapter 6. Alright, we're going to begin reading from verse 15. Right, God's word says, when Jesus therefore perceived that they would come and take him by force to make him king, he departed again into a mountain himself alone. And when even was now come, his disciples went down into the sea and entered into a ship and went over the sea toward Capernaum. And it was now dark, and Jesus was not come to them. And the sea arose by reason of a great wind that blew. So when they had rowed about 5 and 20 or 30 furlongs, they see Jesus walking on the water, on the sea, and drawing nigh unto the ship, and they were afraid. But he said unto him, it is I, be not afraid. Then they willingly received them into the ship, and immediately the ship was at the land, whither they went. Let's go ahead, we'll open the word of prayer. We'll get into this passage to pray. Lord, we do thank you for this time that we can gather together, Lord, and come around your word. And Lord, I do ask that you be with us, that you be with your word, that you would speak through the preacher, Lord. Lord, that I wouldn't be seen, but you would be seen, and your word spoken. Lord, I do thank you for the blessing of the service, Lord, and knowing that Pastor's sick, Lord. But the kids coming up and playing the music for us to sing to, Lord, we do pray that it was a sweet smelling savour unto thee, Lord, as we sung unto you, Lord, the words of the hymn writers, Lord, and that you will be well pleased with the praise from our lips, Lord. Right now we do pray that, Lord, would just honour you and hearing what you have to say to us, Lord, in whatever capacity it may be, Lord. That you'd encourage us, that you'd rebuke us if it's necessary, Lord, and that, Lord, that it is all for the growth of us as a church, Lord, to grow closer to thee, Lord, and to continue to grow closer to thee, Lord. So I just ask that you would continuously lead and guide, Lord. I do pray for those that aren't well, Lord. We think of Pastor, we think of Shane, Lord. We think of those that aren't here for whatever reason, Lord, and pray for your healing upon them, Lord, be it spiritual, physical, Lord, and I just ask that you would continue to lead and guide there, Lord. We think of Demi Dow as well, Lord, and just ask that you would continue to just lead and guide there. Again, we just bring the service to you. Just pray these things in Jesus' precious name. Amen. Okay. So we have the 3 accounts. So what I'm going to do is just give you a wee bit of a background to this particular story. Or this particular event, whatever you want to call it. In Matthew, there was it kind of carries on, and that is the only account where it leads to not only Jesus walking on the water, but also Peter. He, I suppose, just goes out and being the man he is, Lord, can I go and walk on the water? Invite me to walk on the water, and Jesus said, come. And then he goes on and he ends up walking on the water, and just before just as he has his eyes on the Lord, he looks around at the winds, and then all of a sudden he begins to sink. I don't know how fast you have to sink when it becomes water. If it was me, Lord help me, wouldn't get out before I would be underneath the water. It would be Lord. So there must have been some sort of special circumstance for him to kind of slowly raise and slowly go down, and then be able to say, Lord help me, and then for the Lord to kind of catch him as well. So all we know is he said, Lord help me, and we also know that Jesus called him as well. But Matthew's the only account that talks about that. There's some little differences between John, well, not differences, but more knowledge between John, and more information is given in Mark as well, and we'll kind of look at those two in particular. And really what the main, I suppose, focus that I want to look at, and the title of this is Facing Contrary Winds. So we're going to be focusing on the contrary winds kind of aspect of this, and on what happened in this particular story, and basically apply it to us as Christians as well. Now, all of the Gospels have a record of what happened exactly before the incident. The incident that happened before that, you may know about it, was the feeding of the 5,000. Anyone know about that particular event? Just Norman. Okay, you have to be an older Christian to know that story. Right? I'm sure we know about the feeding of the 5,000. And it was 5,000 men plus women and children. And so that great miracle happened. What was the contents, kids? What was the contents? Hands up. What was the food that they ate? Anyone know?
5 loaves and 3 fish.
Sorry?
Fish and bread.
Fish and bread. What were the quantities? How many?
5 and 3.
5 and 3. 5 and 3. Right. So that happened just before Jesus goes and sends his disciples out to the other side of Tiberias, of the Sea of Galilee. Sorry. So he sends them out, and so they're on a bit of a, I suppose, on a bit of a high. You know, they've just seen their Lord do a miracle. They've just collected 12 baskets of bread from 5 loaves of bread, and these were the leftovers. So obviously that was a great thing that happened. And they would have been like, oh man, look, you know, if that happened in front of my eyes, I know I would be kind of buzzing, you know. It's like, oh man, what an awesome event. And then Jesus, go to the other side of the sea. Yeah, sure. I mean, you're God. You've done this great miracle right before our very eyes. Before that, even previous to that, just what had just happened is John the Baptist. He had just died and had been beheaded by a king, and Jesus was trying to get away from the crowds. He was trying to lose him. He was a bit of a after all that he'd done, his fame had been heard right throughout the country, and he tried to get away from the crowds, but he was followed, and then that's where that miracle happened with feeding the 5,000 men. John, in this passage in John, sees something very interesting. In verse 15, it said there that when Jesus therefore perceived that they would come and take him by force to make him a king. Okay, it's not something that I really took notice of. These people wanted to make him king. Oh, he was mocked as the king of the Jews later at his death, but the crowd wanted to make him king, and he was someone that they wanted to follow. It was almost as if they thought that he was the Messiah, but obviously Jesus didn't go along with that. God had other plans. He was going to turn to the Gentile nation. I suppose that's a message for another day. But in Mark chapter 6, so if you've got a bookmark, if you could leave it in chapter 5, Mark chapter 6, sorry, that'd be great. We'll be flicking backwards and forwards between John and Mark. And possibly Matthew as well, so if you want to leave a bookmark there, we'll just quickly turn over there. But Mark chapter 6, and in verse 45, okay, so we read there, and straightway he constrained his disciples to get into the ship and go to the other side before Bethsaida. I suppose I'll ask the question, was it God's will for the disciples to go onto the ship and go to the other side of the Bethsaida? Was it? Yeah. All right. It couldn't really be more clearer than that, than Jesus going up to you and asking you to do it. All right. That's as clear as it can be. All right. So he obviously knew what he was doing. Jesus, or he knew what his command was. He constrained his disciples to get on the ship and go to the other side. While he sent away the people. So he basically stood back, stayed behind. So the reason was, you go, I'll deal with these people here, and send them away. Did Jesus... No, we'll go to Mark chapter, verse 48 then, or we'll continue on the story. Actually, in verse 47 it says, and when it was come, the ship was in the midst of the sea, and he alone on the land, and he saw them toiling and rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them. And about the fourth watch of the night he came unto them walking on the sea, and would have passed by them. So here we read the term contrary winds. Contrary winds. So if you could turn to, let's say, 2 Corinthians with me, 2 Corinthians chapter 7. 2 Corinthians chapter 7. Now, contrary winds is something that everyone is, I suppose, going to get sometime during your life. All right, something that's contrary to what I suppose your expectation is, or what the norm is. You're going along, and things are going swimmingly, I guess. But when God he calls you to a life of faith, when you're called to a life of faith, when you're called to the Christian life, it isn't all praise, it isn't all honour, it isn't all glory. Job chapter 14 verse 1, it says, a man that is born of a woman is few days and full of trouble. Okay, our lives are full of trouble. Job 5:7, yet a man is born unto trouble as sparks fly upward. Another passage in Ecclesiastes chapter 2 verse 22 and 23, it says, for what hath man of all his labour, and of the vexation of his heart ran he hath laboured under the sun, for all his days of sorrows and his travail grief, yea, his heart taketh not rest in the night. This also is vanity. And James, there's a verse there, James chapter 1 verse 2, brethren, count it all joy, when, not if, when you fall into diverse temptations. Now over in 2 Corinthians, if you turn down to chapter 7, 2 Corinthians chapter 7, in verse 5, we have an ordeal that Paul describes on an occasion. In this particular occasion, he was coming into Macedonia, and he says, for when we were come into Macedonia, our flesh had no rest, but we were troubled on every side. Without were fightings. On the outside there were there were fightings. You know, there was a time where he lists a whole lot of perils that he'd been through. But in this particular case, there were fightings. But it's not on the outside, also within. There were fears. He was fearful, right? And that's trouble comes to us, right? Trouble comes to us not only as Christians but as people. Trouble's going to come our way, and it isn't always physical. It isn't always on the outside. It's also on the inside. Sometimes it's mental. But what's more important, when trouble comes, it's always going to be spiritual. There's a spiritual battle going on. And there's that verse in Ephesians 6:12, I've got it here. There's a reason why we wear the armour of God. And it says, therefore, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of the world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Right? So whenever trouble comes to us, whenever there's a mental battle coming to us, it's not a physical battle, it's not a mental battle, it's a spiritual battle. It's either the devil wants you to be ineffective for God, or God wants you to be effective for God. Right? There's toiling and swaying in this in the spiritual realm, and they're all fighting over your soul, essentially. So whenever trouble comes, I suppose there's one or two ways you can go. You praise God or blame God, whatever way you want to go. Now, I talked about expectations before. Many times in our lives we come across situations where we come up with expectations, and for the most part they're pretty fair. They're pretty good. Usually expectations are based on a number of things. It could be what you know, what you've experienced, what others have told you. A number of things could base your expectations. But sometimes they're not right, sometimes they're wrong. One example I always kind of go to is the newly married couple. Too bad Amber and Calvin aren't here. Some advice for them, but maybe they can hear it online or whatever. But the newly married couple, we have the husband and the wife. The husband expects the wife to cook a certain way, to cook like their mum had cooked. Kim was fortunate quite there, but other mums, and but it's not always the case, all right? It is usually a joke that goes that comes along, but they expect them to cook like their mum, but they don't take into account that mum has fashioned their taste buds to like the food that they like the certain way that they like it. You know, they've gone that way, and maybe it's the other way, that the husband is expected to provide for the family financially as dad did, as their dad did, and maybe that's the expectation on that side, on the wife's side. But again, what's not taken into account is that after failed businesses, after saving and scrimping and going through the hard part as they were a little kid, and when finally they have an understanding of what finance is like, they're all good now. They're in a house that's how it should be. But they don't remember what it was like before, and how hard it was for the parents. But expectations are sometimes wrong, and I think that's the case with Christianity. People that look from the outside in, the expectations to become a Christian, oh no, I have to do this, and this. And that's the expectations, because they see Christians not doing this, and this. Oh no, I must not do that. And the expectation is, to become a Christian, I must not do this, and this. But it's more trust in God, and out of that comes not doing this, and this. Hope you know what I'm saying when I say what I'm saying. It's kind of weird, really. Okay, so after all this, we'll go back to our passage because I've gone somewhere else. I've gone to a different world, really. So we've got our contrary winds. So if we go back to let's say Mark chapter 6. So this is a spiritual battle going on, and whenever trouble comes, as I said, whenever trouble comes, right, it's a spiritual battle, and it is coming for you, and it is real, and it will happen, right. The first point I want to make is that when you find yourself in that situation, I want you to know that God knows exactly where you are. In fact, He was probably the one that put you there, definitely allowed you to be in that situation. Okay, so God's in the know, all right? In Psalm 139, whither shall I go from thy spirit, or whither shall I flee from thy presence? All right, God is everywhere. Not only is He everywhere, but He knows where you are too. Okay, we'll just look at that and bring that down. But what's the first 4 words of verse 48 we've got there? Mark chapter 6, verse 48. And he saw them toiling. Okay, and he saw them. All right, he saw them. All right, Jesus, where he was on the mountain to pray, could see them. Now, whether this was... So what you've got to remember was night time. So whether they had super eyes or whatever, we know that he could see them, right? God's word is clear on that. He could see them toiling away and struggling. But God knew exactly where they were. In fact, not only did he know exactly where they were, he was the one that sent them there, right? He sent them there. He said, go on the boat and go to the other side. That Jesus know was going to turn nasty? I believe he did. Not long before there was a story of him commanding the winds and the waves to stop after a big storm that was going on, and he was asleep, and disciples woke up and they were feared for their lives. Right? These were seasoned fishermen, people that knew the sea, and they were fearing for their lives, and then Jesus, you had a little faith, and he commanded the winds and the waves, and they marvelled at that. So he knew it was going to turn nasty, and he knew exactly that was going to be there. Turn over to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Sometimes you hear of people abandoning God when their faith is tested, even just a little bit. Their faith may be tested, and God, He tests our faith. Yeah, He does. But there is a promise He gives here in verse 13. He says, "There hath no temptation taken you but as such as common to man." Whatever temptation you've gone through, it's happened to someone else. But God is faithful. Okay, this is not reliant on anything that we do or we have done. It's God that is who is the one that is faithful. And here He is faithful in that, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but with that temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. God is faithful, we read here. And although we may have our backs against the wall, maybe somewhere where we kind of feel trapped, God says He's always made an escape route, or will give us the strength to just break through what we need a breakthrough. So in the midst of the contrary winds, the things in your life that you thought they would go this way, but God all of a sudden, He says, no, you're going that way. Just as you thought everything was all of a sudden okay and things are going well, next minute, ooh, what does 2 lions mean again, Chris? Pregnant. Oh. Maybe you thought everything was going well, and then a doctor comes up to you and he says, oh, I've got some tough news for you. Your mum or your dad or your son or daughter's only got 6 months to live. Or maybe, probably more realistic, you think everything's going well, and you're praising God, and then your car breaks down. Oh, see the Powerball, oh man, that's high this month. Oh, you smashed that window. Oh, gonna have to get that fixed. Oh, where am I going to get the money from? But the first thing, the first point is that God knows exactly where you are. In fact, He was probably the one that put you there, right? Secondly, we have the second point is God's grace can only begin when you've used your own resources. When you've used up your own resources. There's a hymn. He giveth more grace, it's called. He giveth more grace. And it says, when we have exhausted our store of endurance, when our strength has failed ere the day is half done, when we have reached the end of our hoarded resources, our Father's forgiving is only begun. Turn over to 2 Corinthians chapter 12. I think this is the passage I went to for men's meeting one time. But remember Paul's thorn in the flesh. His thorn in the flesh. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. He had a thorn in the flesh. He went and sought the Lord 3 times in this matter. So yeah, there was something wrong, and he prayed to God 3 times. He came to the Lord in prayer, and he specifically asked for him to get rid of this thorn in the flesh. All right. So on 3 occasions he said, "Lord, get rid of it," and surely God would grant a man of Paul's standing and of his nature and his standing in the Lord. Surely God would grant him that request. And his response in 12 verse 9. What's his response? What was his response to him? My grace is sufficient for thee. Sounds like a kind of, get over it, you'll be right. But it wasn't like that. It's more, my grace is sufficient for thee. All right. So not only does he answer his prayer for the thorn of the flesh, he answers his prayer for anything that may go wrong in his life. Anything. My grace is sufficient for thee. It's not just the thorn in the flesh. Whatever you may find yourself going through, Paul, here's your answer. My grace is sufficient for thee. I'm not saying don't go and pray for anything specific. Okay, still ask the Lord for specific things in prayer, but also know that that His grace is sufficient for us. And not only was it a prayer for Paul, not only did he answer prayer for Paul, but he answered prayer. This went in Scripture. He answered prayer for every Christian that comes to the Lord. My grace is sufficient for thee. Back to John chapter 6. What time did we start, Eli? Did you take a time?
Yeah, we started at 11:31.
Oh, okay, sweet. All right, cool. So 11:31 and 2 hours is 1:31, so a little bit of time. All right, John chapter 6. in verse 19, we have a number. What is it? So when they had rowed about 25 or 30 furlongs, they see Jesus walking on the sea. So what happens is they see sail, went over to the other side. The contrary winds happen. All right, so the contrary winds, so they have to start rowing. And when they start rowing, they rowed for 25 to 30 furlongs. All right, this is roughly 5 to 6 k's. Okay, so they say there's about 200 meters to 1 furlong. We also know that Jesus walked up to them in the 4th watch, so between 3 and 6 a.m. And they set sail at evening. Right? Set sail at around 6. Right? So we've got some times. They're not exact times. But there's a possibility that they could have been rowing for 9 to 10 hours. Certainly they're rowing against contrary winds, so they would have been working hard, toiling away. It says here, they use the word toil, toiling away, struggling to trying to get where they're going. And sometimes that's what the contrary winds in our lives. You know, things come across and we try our best to get things right, try our best to fix things, to work harder to pay the bills that need to fix the window that's been broken in the car that's broken down, and we're toiling away, and we're still not getting very far. Still not getting very far. But this was against contrary winds, and they were described as tossed with waves in these 3 passages. They were boisterous winds, and they were great winds. And they were toiling away. And I suppose God's grace doesn't come until the 4th watch, as we see in John chapter 6, and also that says that in Mark 6 as well. So, as a second point, God's grace can only begin when you use your own resources. The third point I want to make is that God's timing is always perfect. So as they were rowing, as they were toiling to just manage this contrary wind, and with much prayer, and I know when we come into our contrary winds, my suggestion would be much prayer, coming into God and praying, but also doing what we should be doing to try and get out of our troubles as well, or our trials, or our temptations that's facing us. So prayer, working towards a godly solution, and waiting upon God. And sometimes that's the hardest bit when we come to the contrary winds that we have in our lives, is waiting upon God. Galatians 6:9. Turn with me there. Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. Okay, God's word says, "And let us not be weary in well doing. For in due season we shall reap if we faint not." So we should be weary in well doing. We're in trouble, and if there's something in our lives that we should be fixing, we should be working hard to get it fixed. It might be whether it's a relationship issue, it could be paying bills. It's the right thing to do, to be honest and pay your bills on time. And we should be wearing well doing. Psalm 27 verse 14 says, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. If we go back to our passage in John, we'll go to John chapter 6. So we see that Jesus saw his disciples from where he was, that they were struggling away, they were toiling, they were trying to get out of that pickle that they were in. I imagine Jesus could have got there earlier. They were only, I suppose, 6 kilometres away, 5 to 6 kilometres away. But he so first, maybe second, third watch, but he didn't reach him until the 4th watch. So why did he come at the 4th watch? I don't know. Maybe so I would have a third point in this message. But sometimes we may feel that God's timing in a situation seems to lack rhyme or reason. Right? His timing is like, oh, I know you're God, but I'm feeling like this, and it doesn't feel too good, God. Can you just see how I see things, God? And I suppose we are to remember that no, he doesn't see things as we see it. He sees things as he sees it. He sees the bigger picture than what we do. We see what's in front of us. We see and we feel what we feel. Right? And God sees the whole picture. And while we're just focused, I suppose, selfishly on ourselves, right? Which makes sense, right? So God's timing is always perfect. To everything there's a season, a time, to every purpose under the heaven. Ecclesiastes 3:1. Now, a couple more things I want to bring up about this event which interest me. So there was a line in Mark's reading. So if you turn over to Mark. Okay, Mark 6, verse 48. And we see, and it says that, and he saw them toiling and rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them, and about the 4th watch of the night, he cometh unto them, walking upon the sea. And this last phrase was pretty interesting, I thought, and would have passed by them. This was always his route. He was always going to walk on water. He sent them away by boat. He sent them to the other side by boat, and he was going to meet them there by walking along the water and just meet them there. Right? That was kind of what his plan was. He obviously knew he wasn't going to meet them there, that he was going to pass by them, but he would have passed by them walking along the sea. I suppose it's confirmed. Oh, well, not really confirmed, but I suppose there's more evidence of that particular thing. And John chapter 6 verse 22. John chapter 6 verse 22. The day following, when the people which stood on the other side of the sea saw that there was none other boat there save the one that went whereinto his disciples were entered, and Jesus went not with his disciples into the boat, but that the other disciples were gone away alone. Okay, so there are a multitude of people seeing 12 disciples go, and that Jesus had sent them away. So when the multitude of people looked across, seeing that there was only one boat, they knew Jesus wasn't on that boat. He was gone. They were gone. The multitude of people that they left, oh, Jesus isn't there. They were still looking for Jesus. They were still, I suppose, in the mindset of wanting to make him king. And Jesus was, I suppose, trying to lose him. A bit like the paparazzi, I guess. Just trying to get away from them. So his intention was always to walk on water and to get to the other side. So that was that. Also, another thing is, that I suppose I want to point out, is the contrary winds that happened to these disciples was nothing out of the ordinary. Just like the contrary winds we have in our lives, there's no temptation under the sun that's common to man. Everyone's been through these contrary winds, and it's the same as these guys here. The contrary winds that happened to the disciples, it wasn't out of the ordinary. The wind was contrary. Okay, sometimes wind changes. The winds change, and they were prepared for that. That's what the paddles were for. That's why they were wrong, because they were prepared that this was a possibility. A lot of them were fishermen, had spent their lives in the sea, so this wasn't the same as the incident that happened before, where there was a big storm and they were fearing for their lives because the storm was over the top. This was, the winds had changed, and they were doing what they were trained to do, essentially, and that was to row themselves out of trouble. So God's timing was always for this incident to happen, for them to meet the disciples in the midst of the sea. So there was no real unusual, nothing really unusual about this story, about the circumstance, except for the fact that Jesus walked on water, right? But that wasn't really unusual after what you'd seen before with the miracles of the loaves and everything else that he'd done beforehand, the healings and stuff. So this again, this can carry on through to Peter, and him going and walking on the water, going and having, I suppose, lack of faith for going onto the water, for getting off the boat. But I suppose that we're not going there this morning, but I suppose there's a study you could do yourselves. It's an interesting one. But we're going to leave that here. So just to summarise, trouble comes to us. Trouble comes to each and every one of us. We're going to find ourselves in a pickle no matter how big or little our faith is. Trouble's going to come to us. No matter how long we've been in the faith, no matter how long we've been a Christian for, trouble's going to come to us. And there is a perception that just because we're Christians, then trouble's not going to find us. Well, that's wrong. All right, if you're called into a life of faith, you're called into a life of trouble. All right, that's just it. All right, until the Lord comes back or He brings it home. How are we to react? Remember, first thing, God knows exactly where you are. In fact, He probably put you there. Secondly, God's grace will kick in when you have exhausted all your resources. Third thing I want you to remember is God's time is always perfect. He's never too early, He's never too late. He's always right on time. We're going to go ahead, we'll close in a word of prayer, and then I'll ask Jason to come on back up and close our service off. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we do thank you for your faithfulness, Lord. I do thank you for all that you do, Lord. I thank you for the promises in your word, Lord, that you'll never leave us nor forsake us, Lord. And that's a promise that we can grab right now, Lord. It's not something that we have to wait till you bring us home or till you come back for us, Lord. That you will never leave us nor forsake us, Lord. And I do pray that you will continue to help us, that you'll be the rock, the support, the pillar that we turn to when things, I suppose, go contrary to what we think, Lord. So, Lord, I do thank you for being able to study this and for the blessing that it has been to be able to study and to learn from the Word. And I do pray that someone here, that everyone here would take note from your Word and to move forward and to continue to look forward to you, Lord. If there's anyone here that you've spoken to change or to come to you in faith, Lord, I do pray that you'd be with them in that they will seek. There's no other place to seek your forgiveness than here in church, Lord. And I do pray they would do so, Lord. If some have been encouraged, Lord, thank you for that, and pray that you continue to encourage and to lead by them, Lord. And again, I just thank you for this message. I thank you for this time that we're able to spend in your word, Lord. Lord, be with us for the rest of this day, Lord. And that you just, again, be with those that are still unwell and still need of healing, Lord. Again, we thank you and pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
All right, thanks, Eric.